Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today on the channel, we're finally doing another list video. It feels like it's been ages since I've done a proper one, and I can't wait to talk about these books today. As the thumbnail and title might suggest, these are comics that are finally in my comic book collection. Candidly, I put this list together to really talk about some books I've recently added to the collection that I have wanted to for many years now in some cases. Some of these books I've reviewed recently on the channel or have reviews forthcoming, or honestly I'm just reading for enjoyment. At any rate, I can't wait to discuss them all with you over the course of this video, and if you see anything in the video you'd like today and you'd like to pick up your own copy, I highly recommend you check out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. You can find a link to their website in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can actually use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's probably the best way to support this channel. Thank you for considering. Now let's get started with today's list. First up today, in no particular order, we have Daredevil by Nocenti and John Romita Jr. Omnibus Volume 1. Now this collects the first chunk of their run on this amazing title. And I am elated to finally have this in my collection for a couple reasons. One, this is a newly released omnibus at the time of this recording, so honestly I'm really happy to have it in my collection because I'm just happy this omnibus exists, period. I did have some of Nocenti's run collected in paperback once upon a time, and I've read miscellaneous issues over the years, but I've never really started from the beginning and properly made my way through it. From my understanding, this is one of the most underrated comic arcs on Daredevil. I've heard that Nocenti is an incredible writer, and if you've watched the channel for any length of time, you may or may not know that Daredevil is actually my favorite comic book hero of all time. So when I heard that and I knew there was this big run I just have not really sat down and committed to, I knew I'd want to check it out sooner or later. When I heard that this book was coming, it was just an absolute pre-order, must-pick-up collection, and I'm so happy I finally have it. So far, I will admit I haven't deep dived into it quite yet. I've dabbled a little bit, but I am hoping to make my way through it as I get out some of these other books I'm trying to read and review. I am curious for any viewers out there right now, have you read Ann Nocenti and John Romita Jr.'s Daredevil run? Did you pick up this omnibus? What are your thoughts so far? Have you read it before? Do you plan on reading it? I'd love to get some discussions going, maybe kind of up my hype for this book even more, but I will say I really love how this is put together. It's great to see it in oversized format. Again, I had some of these issues in paperback, but watching it in an oversized format now, I'm just really stoked. It's also candidly been a minute since I've read any Daredevil that wasn't from like explicitly the modern period. I know I've read Frank Miller and some of the Silver Age stuff, but it's rare I go back even a couple decades. You know, anything before like Kevin Smith's era on Daredevil, I really haven't gone into as extensively. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. But yeah, I'm really happy this is finally in my collection. Next up today, we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the IDW Collection, Volume 1 hardcover from, you guessed it, IDW. Now, I did read and review this on the channel recently, so I have talked about it a little bit if you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on it, but this is a book I am so thankful to finally have in my collection. I can't tell you for how many years I've seen the incredible kind of katana spine designs of these hardcovers at comic book shops, online, in videos, and I've always wanted to pick up a couple for myself. As someone who grew up with the Turtles firmly in the cultural zeitgeist, I've always been aware of the Turtles. I've seen commercials, I've seen merchandise, toys, I've watched movies, I've watched animated series, but I had really avoided somehow reading really about the Turtles themselves. I really hadn't gone back to the source material. So recently I've actually been making my way through the original comic run, that black and white run, but I also simultaneously picked up this IDW run. I've heard such great things about this kind of modern reboot, refresh of the franchise, and reading this first volume, I can say it absolutely lives up to the hype. I love that we have one of the original Turtles co-creators on this book. I love the art direction we get. I think all the Turtles characters are so well defined, along with their secondary cast of characters, and I would say even if you went in completely blank slate to the world of the Turtles, this is a perfect jumping on point, particularly if you don't want to read that original run from the 80s. I love the oversized hardcover as well. These editions even have a nice little sewn ribbon, so you have a nice little built-in bookmark, which I always enjoy. There is a kind of uniformity to this run too, where they all have the same spine design other than different colored katanas on the spine. It looks really amazing on a bookcase, and I cannot say how much I enjoyed this first volume. It really does contain the first major arc in the series, so you can read this fairly self-contained, or you can let yourself be pulled into the next story that begins going into volume 2. But yeah, really love this TMNT IDW collection, and I'm so happy I'm finally making my way through it. Next on the list today, we're looking at The Complete Irredeemable by Mark Waid and Peter Krause. I really cannot believe this Boom Studios title is finally in my collection. Some time ago, I reviewed the first really small paperback, which I think only had the first 4 issues of this run. I always wanted to make my way through it because honestly, the first few issues of Irredeemable were one of the first indie comics I ever read, and I always wanted to finish out the story. I am a huge fan of Mark Waid, and I know that we've seen a lot of kind of Superman gone wrong stories, but this was honestly one of the first I ever encountered, and I've always wanted to see how the rest of the story played out. So I do have this paperback standard size that collects all of the issues of Irredeemable. I've really enjoyed making my way through this as well, and I'll be honest here because I think that this is a space for honesty. I have not finished this book either. I got it just in my collection fairly recently, and I am still actively making my way through it. When I do finish it up though, I definitely plan to review it, so please hold your spoilers, but I would love to hear in the comments, have you read Irredeemable? Did you read any of the companion series that Mark Waid also did around this time? I would really like to hear that, but yeah, I'm really excited. Again, there are a lot of kind of Superman gone wrong kind of stories, but this is always one of the ones that intrigued me first. This is one that I honestly heard about first, and to have this finally in my collection so I could read the entire story, it's kind of a dream, and I honestly cannot believe I didn't pick up a copy sooner. The art direction in this series as well, personally, I really like. It's really polished, it's really vivid, everything just really jumps right off the page. And as far as the writing goes, I don't know about you, but for me, Mark Waid is a comic book writer that I rarely feel phones it in. I'm a huge fan of Mark Waid's writing, and kind of like Geoff Johns and a few other short lists of creators, it's rare I walk away from a project they've been attached to that I haven't at least enjoyed. And some of what they've done ends up being some of my all-time favorite comics, so we'll see where I land on the rest of Irredeemable, but it is off to a great start, and I can't wait to finally finish it out now that I have it in my personal collection. Next on the list today is a really fun one. This is the Locke and Key Keyhouse Compendium by Joe Hill, Gabriel Rodriguez, J Photos from IDW. Now this is a fun one to add to the list because I'm going to call this, I'm happy to have it finally back in my collection. That's right, I did own Locke and Key, the original main series, in a box set that had the 5 or 6 paperbacks all in a box. I loved those comics. This is honestly one of my favorite comic book series I've ever had the pleasure of reading. I just think it's gorgeous from end to end. One of my favorite kind of dark fantasy coming of age series. But I did sell it off some time ago, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get it back in the collection. I was really happy when I heard about this Keyhouse Compendium, because even though they called it a compendium, it is an oversized hardcover edition with a dust jacket that happens to be the exact dimensions of an omnibus edition. So I do consider this kind of a Locke and Key omnibus, and honestly, this fits so much better in my bookcase. I love seeing this story in an oversized format, and to have it all in a single volume, it is just a really fantastic treat. Now, I did do a review of this book recently on the channel if you'd like more details, but again, I'm just so happy to have this back in my collection. I think I got rid of it maybe a year or so ago, so I did feel its absence, and this is just, again, for me, the perfect way to collect the story. And in case anyone has never heard of Locke and Key, again, as I mentioned, it is kind of a dark fantasy, almost horror series that follows this young family, the Locke family. Basically, after a horrible family tragedy, The remnants of this family go to an ancestral home somewhere in the Northeast, where upon the grounds there are a sequence of magical keys that all have their own kind of power or ability. There's a lot of generational family history and trauma involved in this series, and we predominantly follow the three children, two teenaged and one a young boy, but I really just cannot say how much I've enjoyed this book, and just revisiting some of it recently, just, yeah, an absolute treasure. Okay, moving right along, we have Helen of Wyndhorn by Tom King and Bilqis Evley from Dark Horse. Now, admittedly, this is one I'm so happy to finally have in my collection, even though it's a recently released collected edition of a story that's not all that old. So you might be saying, why are you making a point that it's finally in your collection when it's a really contemporary pick? Well, I'll explain. I am a huge fan of Tom King and Bilqis Evley's other collaborations, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. In fact, that was one of my favorite books that I read, I think in 2023 or whenever I got to it. I love that book so much. The combination between Tom King's lyrical prose partnered with the kind of fanciful, ornate, just beautiful artwork of Evley, I just really couldn't express just how much I loved it. When I heard they were collaborating again for this series at Dark Horse, I knew I could not wait to finally have a chance to read it for myself. And month by month, as those single issues came out, I lamented the fact that I was only a collected editions reader and collector, because it meant I had to wait eagerly for this release to drop. So imagine my joy when I finally got this hardcover in my collection and found out, much like Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, you guessed it, I did love this read. Now, this was a bit different than Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. While it does borrow some of the fantastical elements, this story really centers around a young woman, the titular Helen of Wyndhorn, who after losing her father basically goes back to her grandfather's ancestral home in Wyndhorn, and she basically becomes kind of his ward. She's really kind of a rebellious young woman, though, and she really tries to buck some of the niceties of this estate, only to unravel a really deep, fantastical world. I just can't express how beautiful this work is. Between the writing from Tom King and, of course, the art from Bilqis Evley, it really is a triumph. I really can't recommend it highly enough, and yeah, wow, I'm so happy. Even if it's only been like a year since I first heard about this series, I finally have it in my collection, and I am really, really thankful for that. Don't miss out on Helen of Wyndhorn. Next up, we have Green Lantern by Geoff Johns Omnibus Volume 1. This is the first volume of a 3-volume set, not including the event omnibuses like Blackest Night or Brightest Day, or the companion omnibuses by Tomasi and Gleason. Anyway, I'm getting a little scattered already, but essentially this is arguably one of the best Green Lantern comics runs of all time over at DC Comics. This was really where I fell in love with this character. I'd always been passingly aware of Green Lantern, of course. I enjoyed him to a degree, but this run here by Johns absolutely anchored me to this world, these characters, and the incredible kind of mythos that he constructs. Johns' run really does revolutionize the extent of the Green Lantern universe in a way that's almost hard to articulate. I read this run over a sequence of paperbacks and standard size hardcovers over the course of a couple years, I would say. When I thought I was getting out of the comic book collecting game, I don't know, almost a decade ago now, I did sell off my entire collection, and since then I've always tried to scramble to get this run back in my collection, to read again and just to have on my shelves. I never had the omnibuses before. I actually tried to pick up paperbacks again at one point, and it kind of fell apart. So it's been a while since I've had any of the Johns Green Lantern run back in my collection. Thanks to a recent sale from Organic Price Books, I did acquire all 3 of the volumes, so I finally have this incredible comic book run back in my collection. If you like science fiction, if you like superhero stories, this is definitely the run for you. I mentioned it with Mark Waid, but Geoff Johns is a comic writer that never never misses for me, but every so often he writes something that is just revolutionary, that changes the game for me and just easily sits atop my favorite comics shortlist, and this is certainly one of those. In fact, I would say that this is my favorite comic book run from Geoff Johns, and that's saying something, because that man is a modern legend. But yeah, if you're interested, don't miss out on trying to pick up your own copies of Green Lantern by Geoff Johns. This omnibus set is a real treat. Alright, and keeping this list going, we have the monster-sized Hellboy by Mike Mignola from Dark Horse. In case you missed it, I recently did an overview of this book when I talked about what was the biggest comic book in my collection, because yes, this book is absolutely massive, and without having other books for scale, it might not be immediately clear just how big this book is. If you want more details on that, of course you can check out my overview, or you can stay tuned in the coming weeks where I hopefully will provide a full review of this title. So this does collect all of the main Hellboy stories for that main run from Mignola and team. It doesn't include some of the Hellboy short stories, which you can pick up in a series of short story paperbacks, but I think for someone just trying to venture into the Hellboy comics for the first time, this was a really fun way to do so. We have, again, all of the main stories, or if you collected those 4 paperback omnibuses of Hellboy, this is all of that content blown up into one single hardcover volume. This is a book I'm really happy to finally have in my collection. I grew up watching those Del Toro movies, and I was always curious about this character. Obviously, he is one of the most popular indie comic book characters of all time. I'd put him right up there with Spawn or Mark Grayson's Invincible. I just think he's really, really high up there, and I had always been curious about the comics. I always thought Mike Mignola's iconic stylized art style was always captivating and interesting, and when I've seen Mignola's work in other comics, I always thought he does fit this kind of dark fantasy horror aesthetic, so of course it would pair well with what he created over here with Hellboy. And yeah, so far this has been a treat. This is a book I'm maybe a little bit over halfway through at the time of this recording, but I'm reading it every couple nights and I am really enjoying it. It's really different than what I had expected, honestly. There's some qualities to it that feel like a slow burn, and it kind of goes between that and just really action heavy. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. It is really fascinating, and I can't wait to talk about it more extensively on that forthcoming review. But yeah, this is a real treat, and one I'm really happy to finally have the chance to pick up and read through. And lastly, to round out our list today, we have The Woods by James Tynion IV and Michael Dialynas. Now, this is a Boom Studios comic release, and why I am excited to have this particular comic in my collection finally is because, again, this is one of the first indie comics I ever read, which is honestly a recurring statement throughout this video, which is pretty cool for me. I think for me, why I wanted to do this video, other than to make this list video, was to talk about books again, that I'm just really happy to finally own. I read some of these initially in my comic reading journey, things like Irredeemable or Here with the Woods, that I borrowed or read parts of and had heard of, but I never was able to finish it out. And now that I have an opportunity to have them in my collection, it's just awesome. And The Woods for me was this cool hidden gem where for the longest time I remember reading the first paperback of this after it came out, really enjoying it. I borrowed it from a buddy, and then I never heard of this series again up until a couple years ago. I actually didn't even know who wrote it or what it was called. I just remembered that there was a story of a high school that got transported to some kind of alien planet and they just had to survive. And I Googled some of those key words and I found it and I was like, oh wow. And I was able to read it on, I think, Comixology Unlimited once upon a time. Couldn't believe that James Tynion IV wrote it, who had become a favorite writer of mine after Something is Killing the Children and some of his other work. Anyway, I had a blast reading through it. I did finish it. So now to have a whole collection like this, it's just awesome. And I love that Boom put this together. I do hope to review this on my channel shortly. So if you'd like more of my thoughts on The Woods, I do plan to release a review sometime in the coming weeks or months. But yeah, the art here is gorgeous as well. I already kind of dropped the premise for you. It's about a bunch of high schoolers that are transported to kind of this alien world. They have to band together to try to survive the horrors and monsters and all sorts of wildness us on this alien planet. And yeah, it just really works for me. I think Tynion really dialed it in here. I think this is one of his earlier professional works, but yeah, it just really works. It still holds up, and yeah, really, really happy to have this in my collection. And frankly, I'm just happy Boom put this together. I'm happy this exists. I was so close to picking up the trade paperbacks for some time, but now that I got the hardcover, I have no regrets. Okay, and just like that, we're going to begin to bring this list video today to a close. This has been comic books that are finally in my collection. I'm so thankful for each and every one of these, whether they're books I've always wanted to have in physical copy, I'm thankful to have back in the collection in some format, books I've really loved in the past, or books I'm just reading for the first time. These are all books I'm just really thankful for. I would love to hear in the comments section, what are some books that you've picked up recently that you're so happy to finally have in your collection? Or maybe you're more of a reader than collector. What are some books maybe you're so happy you finally had a chance to read lately? Or let me know, of the maybe 8 books here, do you enjoy any of them? Have you read any of the titles from this video? Are you interested in any of them now that I've kind of flipped through a couple and spoken briefly on them? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that in the comments section. I always enjoy discussing these things with all of you, and thank you so much for watching. Like I said, it had been a minute since I put together a proper list video like this, and I was so happy to do it. I hope you liked it as well, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks everyone, and have a good one.